The History of Poland, Episode 15, Zbigniew's Many Troubles. Hello again and welcome back. Last time we left off with a rebellion. With Władysław ruling impotently, the real power rests with Sieciech, the Count Palatine and military commander of Władysław's forces. Sieciech has been ruling with an iron fist these last years, causing many nobles to flee Poland for their lives. Many have ended up in Bohemia, where, catered to by the Bohemian Duke Władysław, secret talks began to take place to invade Poland with Władysław's son, Zbigniew, at the head of the forces. Fortunately for the would-be rebels, Zbigniew is available and willing to take up the cause, and local nobles in the city of Wrocław are happy to be the staging ground for the rebellion. The chief goal of these rebels? The overthrow of Sieciech. With peace talks failing, the only recourse for Władysław, his son Bolesław, and his chief advisor Sieciech are to respond militarily. Władysław is well aware that the loyalty of his forces are split, at best, with a great deal of the populace being upset with Sieciech's heavy hand. Knowing that his back is up against a wall, Władysław sends word to the King of Hungary, Ladislas. We've run into Ladislas on a couple of different occasions at this point. He was the grandson of Mieszko II, meaning that he was the cousin of both Bolesław II and Władysław. He was also born in Poland, and, according to Gallus Anonymous, he kept many of the customs that he had picked up growing up as a child in Poland. He was eventually placed on the throne of Hungary by his cousin, Bolesław II, and it was in his position as King of Hungary that he eventually greeted Bolesław after he had been ousted from his seat of power in Poland. Accepting Bolesław as a guest before his untimely demise, Ladislas also apparently took in Bolesław's son, Mieszko, who would eventually go on to die an untimely death when he returned to Poland at the invitation of his uncle, Władysław. While we don't have any first-hand accounts of Ladislas's relationship with his relative Mieszko, circumstantial evidence indicates that the two are somewhat close and that Ladislas may have stood in as a father figure for Mieszko after Bolesław had died. With this in mind, it should come as no surprise that Ladislas may not have been entirely happy that Mieszko was killed after returning to Poland, likely with the knowledge of his uncle Władysław, and, even more likely, at the orders of the Count Palatine, Sieciech. Unfortunately for Władysław and Sieciech, they didn't really remind themselves of this personal history and potential animosity when they invited Ladislas into Poland to help them repel the Bohemian invasion being led by Zbigniew. With such a prelude, it should come as no surprise that Ladislas took this opportunity to get some payback on behalf of Mieszko and Bolesław. We hear in Tadeusz Mantufel's book, The Formation of the Polish State, edited for clarity, quote, "The campaign against Silesia was undertaken with aid of Hungarian troops, but it took a peculiar turn. In order to avenge the deaths of Bolesław II and his son Mieszko, the Hungarian king, Ladislas, entered the Polish camp and seized both Sieciech and Władysław's son Bolesław. To continue the campaign under these circumstances was impossible, and Władysław was forced to concede." End quote. As Gallus describes this event, quote, "This action brought them more loss and disgrace than honor or advantage." End quote. That's a bit of an understatement. There's no better event that illustrates Władysław's unsuitability for authority. First, he was seemingly caught unaware that Ladislas may not be a steadfast ally. Second, he managed to witness both his chief military commander and the heir to the throne being taken captive. Finally, he was apparently incapable of doing anything in response to this. He should not have been in charge. With the situation having deteriorated from a simple rebellion into the kidnapping of two of the most powerful and significant people in all of Poland, albeit one was a child, Władysław made a bid for peace. According to the terms, Zbigniew was legitimized as an heir. The Bohemian Duke Władysław managed to reinstate Polish tribute for the Silesian territory, and Władysław was thoroughly humiliated. It's unclear how, but Sieciech and Bolesław managed to get back to Poland, either as part of the terms of Władysław's capitulation or via subterfuge, but however it happened, they were back, and Sieciech was, understandably, very upset. Which is a good moment to pause and consider Sieciech's motives in all of this. Sure, it's clear he wants power, but to what end? According to Mantefel, Sieciech was part of a long line of sovereign princes of Sieciech, and he may have been using his position not just for improving his own power, but possibly to overthrow the Piast dynasty and replace it with one of his own. That may seem absurd, but if you think about the position of the Piast, it's not like it was impossible. In the last few decades, we've seen Poland invaded numerous times. We've seen Casimir split the state between his sons, we've seen Bolesław overthrown and then apparently murdered, we've seen his son killed, and we've also seen Władysław come along without any will to rule with a firm hand. It may have been challenging to do, but I can easily imagine a scenario where Władysław dies, Bolesław is too young to rule in his own right, and so the long-time power behind the throne, Sieciech, rules during a regency. Then, with Sieciech in complete control, he continues his practice of appointing people personally loyal to him to key positions around Poland. Eventually, Władysław dies in a tragic hunting accident, and Sieciech rules in his own right. To be clear, that's not what happened, but it's not like it was outside of the realm of possibilities. The Piast were not an especially strong dynasty at this point. So, Sieciech comes back with the young Bolesław by his side and convinces Władysław that he shouldn't uphold his promises to Zbigniew. Don't irritate the Czechs by halting tribute, and don't antagonize Ladislas again, but with Zbigniew, don't pretend like everything is fine and that you can leave this rebel in Wrocław unchallenged. Simultaneously, Gallus tells us that Sieciech took steps to undermine Zbigniew's position in Wrocław, which coincided with Władysław's decision to attack Wrocław and capture his wayward son. This decision was as much to stop his rebellious son from overthrowing him as it was to render the decision to legitimize him as an heir invalid. As Gallus tells us, quote, Sieciech slyly tempted the leading townsmen with gifts and promises and slowly began to win them over. When he finally managed to win the greater part of them round, Duke Władysław marched on the city of Wrocław with an army, receiving the surrounding castle that had been returned to him. Seeing himself deserted by the leaders inside the city, as well as without, Zbigniew realized that it was hard to have been kicking against the goad. He no longer trusted the loyalty of the common people and feared for his life. So, he fled by night, and as he did so, he reached the well-garrisoned town of Kruszwica, where he was taken in by the townsmen. End quote. Władysław and Sieciech weren't content to merely drive Zbigniew off into the distance and reclaim Wrocław. Rather, they wanted him to be captured and punished. Gallus tells us what happened next. Quote, his father was grieved that Zbigniew had thus escaped unpunished, and that the people of Kruszwica had defied him by taking Zbigniew in. So, with the army, he went in pursuit of the fleeing Zbigniew and put all his forces to attacking the fortress of Kruszwica. End quote. Zbigniew, though, wasn't going to sit back and wait for his enemies to capture him. Instead, he went to the Pomeranians, who were obviously no fans of Sieciech, and with the help of both their forces and the forces of Kruszwica, he marched on his father's forces. We don't have a detailed account of the battle that followed, but we do have a little picture of it based on Gallus's account. He does tell us that Bolesław, who was under the age of 10 at this point, killed many men, but I do find that hard to believe. But the thing that is easier to believe is that Zbigniew lost and had to flee to a nearby fortress with the remainder of his supporters. There were a few consequences to Zbigniew's defeat. First, as Gallus tells us, quote, Kruszwica, previously a wealthy and populous town, was reduced almost to the likeness of a desolation, end quote. This didn't appear to have been a result of the battle itself, but instead as a punishment for supporting the rebellious Zbigniew. Second, Władysław took it easy on his son and promised not to kill or maim him in retribution for his rebellion. However, according to Gallus, Władysław was afraid that if Zbigniew was left to wander freely, he would build a closer relationship with the non-Christian Pomeranians, possibly leading to an alliance that could threaten the stability of the Polish state. So, wishing to avoid this, Władysław sent Zbigniew off to present at Sieciechów, which, as the name indicates, was the personal town of Sieciech, whereas Gallus tells us Władysław, quote, left him for a while to grow lean in the prison of the fortress, end quote. This is not the end of Zbigniew, though, not by a long shot. Eventually, with some princes and bishops interceding on his behalf, Władysław summoned his son, and Zbigniew was reinstated as an heir to the throne. The army was then split between Zbigniew and Bolesław, and as their first mission, they invaded Pomerania. It's completely unclear what happened during this invasion, but upon their return they decided enough was enough with the way things were going. Under pressure from the nobles and magnates of Poland, both Zbigniew and Bolesław went to their father and demanded that he transfer his power over to them, likely with the argument that the government of Poland had been completely mismanaged. While Bolesław was still only a child at this point, and if he took part in the negotiations at all, it was likely under the influence of his guardian, Władysław acceded to these demands. The new power-sharing agreement had both Zbigniew and Bolesław immediately inherit a great deal of Poland, with Władysław as the senior partner in the arrangement. Zbigniew inherited the lands of Wielkopolska, Kujawia, Sieracz, and Wojciechska, while Bolesław inherited the lands of Małopolska, Silesia, Lubuz, and a small part of Wielkopolska. However, while the two oversaw these regions, Władysław continued to exercise direct control over the cities inside of Bolesław's domains, and retain the entire territory of Mazovia. This land distribution would see Władysław exercising control over the most important strongholds, ensuring his seniority. In addition to dividing the land, Władysław also had to decide which of his two sons was the senior partner. This was clearly a difficult decision. If he picked Zbigniew, then his wife and the mother of his son Bolesław would clearly be upset, as would the retainers who had fought by his side against Zbigniew. Not to mention that Zbigniew was a bit too friendly with the Pomeranians for Władysław's taste. On the other hand, if he picked Bolesław, he would earn the ire of Zbigniew, who at about age 24 was considerably more influential than the 11-year-old Bolesław. So, when Władysław's magnates approached him, he had to think fast. Gallus tells us what happened next. Quote, "Now when their father was asked by the magnates which of his sons more distinguished himself in sending and receiving embassies, in calling up and levying an army, and in the manifold affairs of so great a kingdom, he is said to have replied, 'As an old and infirm man, it is my duty to divide the realm between them and to judge matters for the present. However, to set the one before the other, or to grant them excellence and wisdom, is not something in my power. It belongs to God Almighty. Still, I can reveal to you the one desire of my heart, that after my death I would have you all with one accord obey the one who is wiser and better in defending the land and striking the foe. But in the meantime, let each of them keep the part of the realm as it has been divided between them. When I am gone, Zbigniew, in addition to what he now has, should also have Mazovia, while Bolesław, my legitimate son, should have the principal seats of the realm, in Wrocław, in Krakow, and in Sandomierz. But in the last resort, if both of them prove unfit, or if they should happen to fall out with each other, he who sides with foreign nations and brings them into the destruction of the realm should be deprived of rule and forfeit his right of inheritance. And let him possess the throne of the kingdom by perpetual right who better provides for the honor and advantage of the land.' So the kingdom was divided, as has been told, and the father delivered this quite fine speech, and each of the boys visited his own part of the realm, but their father always preferred to stay in his own Mazovia." End quote. So, the two sons would be left to fight out amongst themselves, with Władysław probably hoping that something would happen to change the status quo in the years to come. It's a bit reminiscent of Alexander the Great not telling anyone his succession plans, which, as we all know, ended with a bloody series of war that went on for generations. Spoiler alert, it's pretty much going to play out the same way in Poland. There's one last note to make here about the new political agreement. Sieciech was still the Count Palatine and Voivoda, which at this point in time was the title of the military commander. Unsurprisingly, Sieciech was not happy about this new arrangement. Regardless of the areas that Władysław retained, if the vast majority of the country was split between Zbigniew and Bolesław, then it would be next to impossible for Sieciech to continue to exercise power in the way he wished. Knowing this, Sieciech began to make preparations for the final showdown. And that is where we'll finish for this week. We'll pick up next time with the rest of the struggle between Sieciech, Władysław, Zbigniew, and Bolesław. Who will win? Who will lose? Find out next time. As an aside, I have one quick announcement. I'm going to start a history email newsletter to stay in touch with all of you. If you'd like to sign up, go to historyofpolandpodcast.com and sign up at the bottom of the screen. I know some of you don't subscribe to the podcast, some have Twitter and no Facebook, some have Snapchat, no Instagram, the list goes on. So this is just a way to keep in touch with everyone without needing to create 15 different social media things just to make sure people know there's a new episode out there. No spam, just useful things, images that couldn't fit into a podcast because it's a podcast. I'll probably even throw in the occasional non-Polish history-related thing. Who knows? Again, you can sign up at the website historyofpolandpodcast.com. Thanks. I'll see you next time.